I wanted to do today was speak about Moshiach. I actually wanted to hear your questions on Moshiach and to see how we can answer them. I was very inspired, I don't know if that's the right word for it, but just really thinking about how if we look at the talks of the Lubavitcher Rebbe given at this time, last week, this week, next week, it's just so intense, the reality of Moshiach. And the Rebbe here, in the talk that he gave yesterday, quite many years ago, in the fall of 1991, but that yesterday, as that 2 days ago actually, today is Monday, so Saturday, Shabbos of Chayei Sarah, he was addressing the conference of the emissaries of the Rebbe, the International Conference of Emissaries. It will take place this year, God willing, this coming Shabbos. And the Rebbe there is telling them, all the work of the emissaries is done. Awesome, you did a great job. You've completed the beginning of your work. You completed the middle of your work. You completed the end of your work. Like, you're done. Now, if you're done, why are we, or I'll say for myself personally, why am I still stuck in Chicago? Why is the world stuck with pain and traumas and hardships that are not how this world's supposed to be? The Rebbe says, well, there must be something else. There must be something else. Because all the standard work, you did a great job getting people to have kosher kitchens, getting mezuzahs on people's doors, getting children enrolled in Jewish schools, taking women to the mikvah. You did a great job. Every single Jew in the world isn't doing it all. The amount that was needed to be done was done. Awesome. So what's left? What's left is accepting Mashiach. Accepting Mashiach. That's all that's left, the Rebbe says, in order that he can do his job and get us all out of exile. Very, very intense words. And many others. I'm just quoting one to me that's so powerful. So I'm like, all right, this is a really powerful time. Real strong Mashiach energy for sure. Nothing is random. This is the time of year the Rebbe chose to say these bombshells about the reality and imminency, the now of Mashiach. I think we should focus on it. So I'd like to hear your questions. And hopefully I'll have answers. And maybe my answers will evoke other questions. So anyone like to start? Anyone has any questions on the topic of Mashiach, the redemption, or Mashiach, the Redeemer?
I have a question. I don't know if it's a question or something that I know we now say this is a time, there are all the signs that this time comes closer and all that. But I know that years ago something similar was happening. I'm reading the book. It's a fiction, Gog and Magog. It's a time around Napoleon and the place where Hasidim lived. And it's like what is happening between them, and they strongly believe that was time. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry. They strongly believe it was time when Mashiach was coming.
During the time of Napoleon. Interesting. So I'm not familiar with the work of fiction you're talking about. I'm not familiar with that specific era, that then in history. But definitely, over the years, there have been situations that people have felt now is the time. It only gets stronger, meaning to understand this cosmically. God created the world in 7 days. 7 days, 7 periods of 24 hours each. 24 hours as we understand 24 hours. Each of those 7 days, based on a verse in Psalms, in Tehillim, created a millennium, 1,000 years. So 7 days of creation created 7,000 years, the mandate of this world as we know it. And our sages say that the first 2,000 years of those 7,000 are 2,000 years of chaos. Chaos meaning not at all a time when Mashiach could come. No possibility of redemption then. The world was in a chaotic state. The Torah was not yet given to the world. There was always some righteous, godly person, at least one around, but the world in general was a very not godly. And then, from the year 2000 to the year 4000, began the 2,000 years of Torah. Because in the year 2448, Torah was given to the world. So for those 2,000 years, as Torah is given, as it's studied, as it's learned, as it's practiced, the world is shifting to become more spiritual, to become more godly. Then there was the possibility of Mashiach coming, but it wouldn't be such a good idea. It wouldn't yet be the full-fledged Mashiach energy. It hadn't yet saturated and transformed the world. It was possible, but not, so to speak, almost not a great idea. Not yet ready. Like you're cooking food, you're in a rush, your company's coming, your kids are hungry, and you give them the food, but it's not really completely ready, but you could get by. That would be sort of like the world then, vis-a-vis the coming of redemption. From the year 4000 until up to the year 6000, is the 2,000 millenniums, two millenniums, 2,000 years, when now the world is ready. Meaning Mashiach is a time when the reality of God is revealed in the physical. So for the reality of God to be revealed in the physical has to be saturated enough with godliness for this to really happen. So after 4,000 years from creation, it's possible. And every day that passes, it gets more possible and more possible because more good is done. Godliness is eternal. Evil is transient. If a person does something wrong, they can repent. They could completely remove the evil. But godliness lasts forever. So even though like people talk about the good old days, or we think the good old years, or the good old millenniums, it's not true. Actually, from a spiritual perspective, there is more godliness today in this world than there ever was. I'm not saying that people today are more godly than people ever were, but there's more godliness in the world because all godliness from the beginning of time until now still exists in this world. So from the year 4000, Mashiach could have come. Now we're in the year 5785. We're deep, deep, deep in these 2,000 years. They're almost over. Cosmically, it's almost over. It's a blink of the eye. 5,785. We're talking about some 200 years plus, and we're going to be in the year 6,000. Might sound long to us, but cosmically, that's not so long. So in the past, was it possible that there were moments of great opportunity for the coming of redemption? Absolutely. 100%. We have what's called in Hebrew kitzin, which in English means end dates. And over time, great, as we call them tzaddikim, righteous, holy, godly Jews, have said, in the year such and such, the redemption will come. In the year such and such, the redemption will come. All of those sages, they weren't just like talking out of their hat, as we say. They saw the godliness. It's almost like if you know physics and someone's throwing a ball, if you know all the calculations, you could predict exactly where that ball will land. You know the velocity, you know the mass, you know all the figures. You can know exactly where that ball will land. So these great holy people, these great sages of the Jewish people, they saw, not what we see, they saw what's really going on. And they could say with all the godliness happening, the ball will land, the redemption will come in this year, this in this date, this in this time. Now, I'm still in Chicago, so obviously all of those dates they said didn't materialize in the physical plane, but all of those dates were correct. None of them were wrong. It just means that it wasn't enough to make it a physical reality. We're human beings. We're physical human beings. We need physical reality. But every time a great sage said on such and such a date, such and such a year will be the redemption, it actually was the redemption. But it wasn't yet the physical manifestation. So I'm not sure, I'm being honest with you, I'm not sure in the times of Napoleon, I don't remember any such date going on, but I'm not saying it didn't. But if it was a true date, meaning it's not pure fiction, if it's based on historical fact, then it would be exactly this type of situation. That some great sage saw everything going on in the world, all that's happening within the Jewish people, this should create the reality of redemption. It didn't. It did, but it did in a spiritual sense. So I think what Rachel's question is, so who's to say now that won't also happen? And of course there'll be redemption, and the Lubavitcher Rebbe said there'll be redemption, and he definitely knows what he's talking about. But maybe it'll be like it's been in the past, a spiritual reality. That's a great question. And the Rebbe's explained basically that we're past that. That's why the Lubavitcher Rebbe never gave a date. July 4th, 2022. He never gave a date. He always said now, meaning as he sees it. I can't see a thing. Just like dogs can smell what we're clueless. I look at something, I look at the desk I'm sitting next to, and it looks to me like a solid mass. It's not. Science knows it's moving particles, but my eyes don't see no moving particles. My sense of smell doesn't smell what most animals in the world can smell. My hearing doesn't hear what many animal species can hear. There's a lot going on that we limited human beings are clueless to. So the Lubavitcher Rebbe sees it's here. He has even said that all the spirituality of redemption already is here. It's all here. So what we are waiting for, as he's explaining, is the physical manifestation. Spiritual level, yes, we got that. We're human beings. We're physical human beings. For us, Moshiach means that our physical eyes see the revelation of God. And that's what the Rebbe says is happening now. So that's why now is different than any previous time, because we're past spiritual realities of redemption. The Rebbe says we have all those spiritual realities of redemption. The only thing left, which is what the Rebbe is saying is happening now, is a physical redemption. the physical manifestation of all that spirituality? That was a great question. Anyone else? Next, keep going. This is your golden opportunity.
Yeah,
Everything you want to know and hear, I'm willing to share it. Everything I know about the topic. This is
I
the
think
most
we know so
foundational
little.
topic in Judaism.
We know.
Maimonides enumerated the 13 principles of faith, like the 13 cardinal principles that all Judaism emerges from. And principle 12 and 13 are about the redemption. And Maimonides actually writes, Maimonides is the only codifier, the only legalistic codifier that codifies the laws of redemption. Meaning Maimonides is one of the three primary codifiers of Jewish law. But the other two didn't touch on things that weren't relevant to that time when the Jews were already not in Israel. Maimonides codified everything. He speaks about all the laws that are totally not applicable today. And he speaks about the laws of redemption. And he writes that anyone who does not believe in the coming of redemption is an apostate. It's like they deny the entire Torah. So it's not like, oh, a nice PS. I mean, it's not really legalistic. It's not really practical, you know. It's not like as significant as keeping the Sabbath or keeping kosher or... No, it's the foundation of everything. Actually, the second verse of all the scriptures, the first verse, is mistranslated as, in the beginning, God created heaven and earth. It's really like, for the sake of the first, God created heaven and earth. The second verse of all of scriptures. And the world was chaos. And the Spirit of God hovered. I'm skipping a few words there. And the Spirit of God hovered over the face of the waters. The whole world was water. There was no yet land had emerged. All it was water. And the Spirit of God hovered over the face of the water. And the sages say, what is that Spirit of God hovering over the waters? And they say, this is the Spirit of Moshiach. This is the Spirit of the Redeemer. So primordially, the first vision we have when the world is, as it says in the Hebrew, tohu vavohu, cheshech al panei tehom. It's a world of darkness. It's a world of chaos. It's a world of confusion. And what's the first vision that emerges? The vision of Mashiach, the vision of the Redeemer. Because that's the ultimate point of it all. So the ultimate point, you start with in the beginning as that vision. The beginnings and the ends are wedged together. So what's the ultimate goal? We already are seeing as that first vision. So we can never overemphasize Mashiach. It's truly the point and purpose of it all. In 4 different places in the Midrash, 4 different places, when it questions, or it's stating as a fact, I'll state as a question, why did God create the world? It's a pretty good existential question. Why did he do all this? And the answer given 4 different times in 4 different places is he wants a home in this lowest reality. He wants a home in the lower worlds. This is the lower world. All the other worlds besides this world, there are many other worlds besides this world. They're all spiritual realities, not physical at all. This is the only physical reality. This Milky Way galaxy is the only physical reality. And this is the lowest reality. There's nothing lower than this, because lower than this would be a place where you can't even see God at all. And that would be pointless. So that doesn't exist. So this is the lowest reality where God is hidden and you can search and find him. And in this lowest reality, God wants his home, not in any of the upper worlds. They're all filled with celestial beings, angels. God has no real interest in them. God wants to be here with us. This is a home. That's what Mashiach means. When God has a home on planet Earth with us. And when we decode the word home, a home means a permanent revelation of his essence. Just as we are most ourselves in our home, when we say God wants this world to be his home, he wants a permanent revelation of essence. And that is the crux of Mashiach. Any more questions?
There
Fega?
will,
Yes.
there will be Moshiach, Ben Yosef, and then Ben David, right? Can you tell about this? Or
Sure. So in the Midrash and Kabbalah, it speaks about these 2 different aspects of Mashiach, as Fega said correctly. The first one is called Mashiach ben Yosef, Mashiach the son of Yosef, and one is called Mashiach ben David, Mashiach the son of David. Now, legally, the ultimate redeemer is Mashiach ben David. That is actually part of the legal definition of Mashiach, is a direct descendant of David, meaning the original David, king of Israel. Not only direct descendant of David, he actually has to be a direct descendant of Solomon, the son of David. meaning David had other sons. But if someone's a direct descendant, but through Avshalom or someone like that, it does not count. You have to be a direct descendant of Solomon, the son of David. All of the kings of the house of David were direct descendants of Solomon, the son of David. So that is the ultimate redeemer. But there is going to be a precursor to that, a different type of Mashiach. Mashiach meaning someone that on a different level will save the Jewish people. Now it's actually interesting because Maimonides, and again, Maimonides is the legalistic codifier of Mashiach. Maimonides refers to David himself as Mashiach. Maimonides says the first Mashiach is David because David fought the wars of God, prepared for the building of the temple, created a reality when Jewish people could serve God completely. When Maimonides is looking at Mashiach, he is looking at Mashiach, and this is true from the legalistic perspective. This will be how we would understand Mashiach, the time we can completely, freely serve God from total peace. No barriers, nothing is an obstruction to our service of God. From a Kabbalistic, Hasidic, mystical perspective, we view Mashiach as the time when God is completely revealed. And both are true. It's not, well, which one's it going to be? It's going to be both. God will be completely revealed, and therefore the entire world will be completely, perfectly serving God. So one Mashiach was David, because he created that first era, the time of the first temple, when the Jews had a temple and were able to serve God, which lasted for 410 years. In the Midrash, we speak about this precursor to Mashiach, the son of David. Again, son meaning from the tribe of David, Mashiach ben Yosef, Mashiach from the energy of Yosef. And it's explained that why do we need these two Mashiachs? Because Mashiach ben Yosef is the one who's fighting the evil, and Mashiach ben David is the one who's bringing in the godliness. So we have to destroy the evil. That's the job of Mashiach ben Yosef. It actually says he will die fighting those wars against the evil. And then Mashiach ben David will come and bring in the godliness. As the Rebbe alludes to it, seemingly based on the words of the Rebbe views the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, whose name was Yosef Yitzchak, as the Mashiach ben Yosef. Meaning, again, he wasn't literally from the tribe of Yosef, but he was the energy of Yosef as embodied in his name. And the Rebbe explains that he died fighting the wars of God, that he actually died trying to bring Mashiach. Spiritually trying to bring Mashiach is what actually caused his death. But he fought the wars of God. What evil was he fighting? He was battling communism. He was the Rebbe during the time of the greatest evils that he had to go through in his time as the leader of the Jewish people, the Holocaust and then communism. And that was what he was dedicated to, fighting those evils, destroying those evils. It's actually interesting because I'm talking about the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, who was the sixth Rebbe. Now I'm going to go back one. The fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe, who he established the school, the Lubavitch school for men, where men would learn Hasidus, where men would learn mystical philosophy, like you learn a page of Talmud. And he said that this school, these men, will be fighting God's wars. And he quoted a verse in Psalms that I'm not going to bring in. I could bring it in, but I don't want to get you too confused. Those that disgrace you, God, those that disgrace the heels of the coming of the Redeemer, of Mashiach, of the redemption. And then it says, blessed are you, God, forever and ever. And forever and ever, olam, in Jewish thought, means 50 years. He said, these students, they will be fighting those wars, the wars against those who deny belief in God, the wars against those who deny belief in redemption. And the first 50 years was basically until, again, I'm not looking inside to remember exactly the year, but it's basically till about 1950-51, which was the 50 years of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe's leadership, when the battle was against belief in God. Communism was fighting a belief in God. And the next set of 50 years, the Rebbe's leadership, is the battle against those that don't believe in the redemption, bringing in belief in the redemption. So that's Mashiach ben Yosef. Mashiach ben Yosef fighting God's wars against those that don't believe in God, which was basically the era of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, Yosef Yitzchak, and then the era of the Rebbe, battling, fighting those that don't believe in Mashiach, bringing in the godliness of Mashiach, of the Redeemer, of the redemption. Anyone else? Next?
I have
Sure,
another
Fina, let's
question.
hear. Good.
Cyril, there were couple like false Moshiach. How do we know that the real one is coming? I know there are some qualities, right, that described of the real one.
Absolutely.
And how do we identify?
There were definitely false Mashiachs. The most famous false one was called Shabtai Tzvi. I think he was in the 1600s in Turkey. That was where he ultimately converted to Islam, which saved a new other religion from forming. JC is, of course, I say maybe in a sense the most famous false Mashiach, but I don't know. I don't think he ever claimed to be Mashiach. I think that was created by his followers. But of course, now he is the ultimate false Mashiach, the ultimate false Redeemer. How do we know JC or Shabtai Tzvi were not real? Very simply, they didn't meet any of the criterion of being the Redeemer. The criterion, Rambam, Maimonides, enumerates them. There are 5 criterion. We are supposed to search and find the Mashiach that we can believe in. Well, what do you mean? What do you mean? Mashiach didn't come yet. Well, it says 3 classical sources called the Bartanura, the Chassam Sofer, and the Stei Chemed. These are 3 classical sources. And they all write the same thing, that in every generation, there is always someone who is the Redeemer, who has the soul of the Redeemer. And he's like, I'll call it waiting in the wings. And when the redemption comes, God will come to him and, again, in my words, give him the green light and tell him to go redeem the Jewish people, redeem the world. There's always a Redeemer waiting in the wings, which is just logical. If there wasn't, what would happen if suddenly we deserve redemption? Now a baby will be born. Now we're going to wait 30 years for someone to grow up. So there's always a Redeemer. Always has been a Redeemer. Always. In the Talmud, they speak of a time in Babylonia when 4 different people were assumed to be the Redeemer. 4 different people claimed they were the Redeemer, and they weren't false. They were actually all real. So always we have classically people that claim themselves they are the Redeemer. For example, a very, very great sage whose work is in almost every Torah, called the Or HaChaim, very famous classical commentator, great, great, great tzaddik, great sage. He said about himself that he's a Redeemer. Well, what do you mean he's a Redeemer? Redemption didn't come yet. Didn't come then. That was, again, the 1600s. Redemption didn't come then. But if redemption had come, he would have been the Redeemer. He's a great, 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 very, very holy tzaddik, holy leader of the Jewish people. If he said he was Mashiach of his times, he definitely was. He didn't merit to redeem the Jewish people, not from any lack on his part, but because the redemption didn't come then. Bar Kokhba, very famous Bar Kokhba, he was a Mashiach of his times. He didn't merit to bring redemption because the people messed up. But if the people had not, he would have been the Redeemer. He would have been the Mashiach. So how do we know that a Shabtai Tzvi is not a Bar Kokhba? That a JC is not an Or HaChaim? Very simple. We look at the criterion. The criterion means, like, if I have a job, if I want to hire someone to do something, I'm like, okay, you have to be this, this, and this, and this, because then you'll be qualified to do the job. You'll be able to do the job. So what are the criterion of Mashiach? Now again, Maimonides is writing this as Maimonides is legalistic. So these are legalistically the criterion. There are other things we know about the Redeemer. Like, for example, he will be the wisest man ever. He'll be wiser than King Solomon. But we don't write that in the job description. He'll be the greatest prophet ever. He'll be a greater prophet than Moses. We also don't write that in the job description. What we write in the job description is 5 points. He'll be a king. You say, how can we say that every generation had a potential Mashiach? I mean, since when have the Jews had kings? A king means a leader of the Jews, someone that masses of Jewish people absolutely listen to. Complete obedience, that's a king. From the house of David, as I said, a direct descendant all the way back to Solomon, the son of David. He will be completely immersed in Torah and the commandments to the same degree as the original David, the original Redeemer, which would right away disqualify someone like Shabtai Tzvi or JC because they obviously did the opposite and left Judaism, left adherence to the law. He will fix the breaches in our divine service. He will strengthen the Jewish people to fix the breaches, to fix what's broken in their service of God. Again, disqualifying someone like JC or Shabtai Tzvi that encouraged breaches and told the people not to follow the laws. And he will fight the wars of God. So at any point in our history, definitely since the year 4000, but even before, because there always was, from the year 2000, it was potential, even though it wouldn't really have come then. But any point in our history, there was someone around who fulfilled all those requirements, who was a king, who the other Jews listened to, or at least a nice portion of them, who was a direct descendant, once Solomon is already on the scene, a direct descendant of Solomon, the son of David, who was completely immersed in Torah and the commandments, a godly, spiritual, pure person, and who is dedicating his life to fixing the breaches in our observance, who's dedicating his life to helping world Jewry serve God. Now, obviously, until like modern times in the Lubavitcher Rebbe, it would be very hard for you to see that a Jewish leader is doing that because the world was a much smaller place and you didn't see people having this reach all across the world. But they were doing it spiritually, even though it wouldn't have been obvious to our naked eyes. And he's fighting God's wars. He's dedicated to, what are God's wars? Well, the Rebbe identified, for example, the battle against communism as the war of God. The Rebbe said in the 60s, when communism falls, you will know it's Moshiach winning his war, which was very obvious when, like in 1990, communism fell because it fell to our eyes in such a miraculous way. The Rebbe's battles for the completion of the land of Israel, completion for the people of Israel, those are battles for God. So as the Rebbe says, when Mashiach fights his wars, it doesn't have to be with soldiers and armaments and missiles and guns. The Rebbe calls it war in a manner of peace. He's fighting a war, but he's not fighting a war with physical ammunition. He's fighting a war with godliness. So that's how we know, Fega, when people in the past, whoever was a false Messiah, even if they perhaps were a king in a sense, because people listened to them, which was more true for Shabtai Tzvi than for JC, who really didn't have any followers then. And maybe they did have lineage going back to Solomon, the son of David. I don't know. But definitely the false messiahs were not versed in Torah and the commandments, were not trying to fix the breaches of divine observance, were not fighting God's wars. In general, the false messiahs did the opposite. And the real messiahs, like I'm saying, for example, Bar Kokhba or the Or HaChaim, or throughout the ages, there were people that either identified themselves as Mashiach or other people identified them as Mashiach. I have a little book, a little pamphlet, where we see throughout all of our history, people were either identified themselves or identified by others as Mashiach. All of those people fit this criterion. And I'm saying in Babylonia at one point, when the Jewish people were primarily located in Babylonia then, there was a small settlement in Israel, but the majority of the Jews were in Babylonia for hundreds of years. At one time, 4 separate leaders of the Jewish people, all alive at the same time, they all said they were the Redeemer. Again, not meaning that they thought the redemption had come, but meaning that if the redemption comes now, I know I'm God's Redeemer. And you could say, how could 4 different people think the same thing? Like 3 of them must be mistaken. So the Rebbe's father explains that all 4 truly had a piece of the soul of the Redeemer. And that's what they recognized in themselves, that they had a piece of the soul of the Redeemer. If the redemption had come then, 1 of them would have been chosen by God, not 4. But that didn't mean the other 3 were mistaken. It just meant that their piece would not have been dominant then. But generally, we view it not as 4, but as 1 person.
Thanks, Cyril. Thank you.
Sure. There's a lot to know. It's the hugest topic in Judaism. Most important topic in Judaism. Really, truly. It's a purpose. It's the reason for creation. And especially now when, like Rachel said, so much is happening in the world that from all quarters, from all ends of the religious spectrum of Jewish people, everyone feels like this is it. It's now. I mean, everything since October 7th, the nowness has intensified incredibly. And the Rebbe has already said it's now since, as I'm saying, 91, 92, which might seem like a very long now. Like, how could it still be now? It's been 30 years plus of now. But the idea is, as I said, just like you could envision, if you know physics, that ball exactly where it's going to land. I was saying, this is it. This is now. It's landing. And if we're a little slower than we should be, or we're not doing as well as the Rebbe thought we would, so it's taking a little bit longer. But everything we've ever done, any good deed any of you have ever done, is only helping the process. It's very interesting. The Rebbe actually writes that when Mashiach comes, when the redemption is completely revealed, God will go to every single Jew and thank every single Jew for what they did to bring redemption. I mean, you could say, God's going to thank me. What's he going to thank me for? Any good deed you've ever done. Because every good deed is part of the accumulation of godliness that creates the reality of redemption. And the Rebbe even writes, even though God will know you could have done more, God will know you could have done more, you could have done better, you could have served him more, you could have created more godliness, you could have happened faster. We shouldn't have to wait 30 plus years after the Lubavitcher Rebbe when he says, now, it's all done, now. And it's taken us 30 plus years. I mean, obviously, we could have done it a bit better. But God's not going to focus on that. God's just going to focus on thank you to each and every Jew. Thank you for what you have done. Because every one of us are part of the process. And all the godliness we create through the good we do, it all makes it happen. Rachel?
Cyril, are there multiple versions of how it may be happening? Because I heard some people say that it could be a bad war before that or something awful happening.
There are different versions because if you look in the Midrash, it writes different possibilities, different options, different roads for the coming of the redemption. And that's true. There are different roads. I look at the Rebbe's road because the Rebbe is now the leader. The Rebbe is now seeing what's happening. And the Rebbe never, ever, ever gives any energy to any of those negative roads. Meaning the classical concept, as the title of the book that you mentioned, is Gogu Magog. It speaks of Gogu Magog as this humongous war, this catastrophic war that will happen before the redemption. So some people believe that was the Holocaust. I don't know if it was the Holocaust. Some people believe it was the Holocaust. But definitely I can say when the Lubavitcher Rebbe speaks about the coming Moshiach, he never mentions it. He never goes there. I think of it sort of like, I don't know, you could think of it like if a person was in a beautiful city and you could just walk across the beautiful city and the boulevards, and that's one way to get from one end of the city to the other. Or you could fall in a sewer manhole and crawl through the mud and garbage and slime and rats and then emerge and you traverse the whole city. They're two different ways to the same thing. The Rebbe only went the highway, only went the way of addition in goodness and kindness and godliness, which doesn't mean the other road is not also written in the sources, but it seems the Rebbe just was like, no, that's not how we're doing it. And again, it could be that we already accomplished what we needed to accomplish from that through the Holocaust. When the Rebbe was asked by CNN, a reporter from CNN interviewed the Rebbe, so to speak, by dollar lines, and he said to the Rebbe, what is your message to the world about Mashiach? The Rebbe said, Mashiach is ready to come now. All that's needed on our part is to add in goodness and kindness. And then the reporter sort of questioned that, and the Rebbe said, even a little bit, even a little addition in goodness and kindness. Now again, this is CNN. This is the Rebbe's message to the 8 billion of mankind. Obviously, when the Rebbe was speaking to the Jewish people, the Rebbe gave us more things as well, but that doesn't mean that this is not a road. There's many different things the Rebbe has told us to do to bring Mashiach. And this is the Rebbe speaking to the world saying, add in goodness and kindness. That's a road. That accumulation of goodness and kindness is godliness that can bring Mashiach. Just that. Just that. The Rebbe in the talk I was quoting from 2 days ago and many years ago said, accept Mashiach. Accept Mashiach. That's all you need to do to bring him. The Rebbe very often said, learn about Mashiach. Learning about Mashiach, the Rebbe said, is the straightest, fastest, easiest road to bringing Mashiach is learning about Mashiach. So and the Rebbe said many other things. I'm saying probably the strongest things he said was accepting Mashiach and learning about Mashiach. Though there are many other things the Rebbe said. Charity, obviously the Rebbe brings that in many times. It's a very classical concept that charity brings Mashiach. But in all the various talks and many, many different things, many different techniques and strategies that the Rebbe said to bring Mashiach, the Rebbe never focused on darkness, never focused on pain, never focused on war, never focused on loss. That was never part of the Rebbe's vision of Mashiach. It was always adding in godliness. And again, there are various different aspects to godliness you can add in. I almost vision it like if you had a door, if you could imagine many different locks. And each lock, if you turn it enough, that could open up the entire door. So the Rebbe sees there's this lock, there's this lock, there's the huge lock of learning about Mashiach. Whoa, that's a real powerful one. There's a huge lock of accepting Mashiach. Whoa, that's powerful. But then there's other locks. There's a lock called charity. There's a lock called spreading the well springs of Torah and Hasidic thought to the world. There's a lock called sanctifying the new moon. There's many different things. There's a lock calling all the Jewish children being born into this world, having more Jewish children being born. Many different locks. And in any one of them, really, we could do, and that could be the lock that could open up the door and usher in redemption. But definitely never in any negative way, never in war, never in catastrophe. Rebbe completely never saw any of those things as roads to redemption.
If nobody wants
Yes,
to ask,
Maya?
I have another one.
Sure, go for it.
What do we, when we refer to era of Mashiach, what do we mean? And how about, yeah, that's enough probably, because I have another one, longer question.
Mashiach, what's a little confusing, as many things are, many words in Torah thought could have multiple meanings. Mashiach literally means the anointed one. That's actually what the word means, the etymology of it. Mashiach is from the word Mashuach, which means the anointed one. So Mashiach is really referring to a person, to King Mashiach, the Redeemer, which might sound funny, like, well, Mashiach, the focus is on God. As I said, it's a time when God will be completely revealed to the world. That is the ultimate definition of Mashiach, and yet we speak about a human being as the Redeemer. Mashiach is a human being. But that's how God works. God wants to work through the world. So God didn't personally take the Jews out of Egypt. He needed Moses. He couldn't have done it himself. Of course he could have done it himself. But God always wants to work through the world, through the physical, through the human beings. Just like when we serve God, ideally, we want to serve God through nature and not by breaking nature. So God always wanted a human being to represent the Jewish people and be his mouthpiece to the world. So Moses was his mouthpiece to the Jewish people in the world, as was Joshua, as was every Jewish leader ever since. So Mashiach, again, the anointed one, is the king, the ultimate king, and the ultimate teacher of Torah. So that's really where the Mashiach comes from. He will be the ultimate king of the Jewish people in the world and the ultimate teacher of Torah to the Jewish people in the world. Those are his two roles, to be our king and to be our teacher. From the term Mashiach, which really originally, so to speak, refers to the person, we speak of, as you said, it's called Yemos HaMashiach, the days of Mashiach, which might be translated as the era of Mashiach. And what that means is the time when the king is completely revealed and we have entered the Messianic time. How will we know we've entered the Messianic times? Well, in a sense, we're sort of in the Messianic times now. The Rebbe said we've been in the Messianic times since 1991. But completely in the Messianic times, two things will happen. First, we will have the temple. The temple will come from heaven, come down to Jerusalem. And two, we will have the entire Jewish people go to Israel in miraculous supernatural ways. Just like as a temple, literally a building will come down from heaven. Actually, the Rebbe says it's going to actually come down. It's going to go to Brooklyn. It's going to fuse with 770. Together it will fly to Jerusalem. It will land on the Temple Mount. How is this? It's supernatural. It's going to be supernatural. And all the Jews will go to Israel. Sages say we'll go on the clouds. We will all get to Israel. Every single Jew in the entire world will be in Israel. How could Israel hold us all? Well, it says all the mountains will flatten and become land, and there'll be so much space. And also, when we think of Israel ancestrally, we think of really 7 of the lands. Abraham was really given 10. We're told the other 3 we're getting by the times of redemption. The other 3 are on the other side of the Jordan. So all those vast lands east of the Jordan, now occupied not by people that are so friendly to us, some more, some less, generally not. All of those lands will be part of Israel as well. So Israel will be vast, and millions and millions and millions of Jews will live in it comfortably. Meaning right now there's officially 15 million Jews in the world. For sure there's more. Some people who don't identify themselves as Jews. Some people who aren't aware they're Jews. They don't know their mother was Jew. All those people find out they're Jewish. All those people go to Israel. and there'll be the resurrection of the dead. So we'll have any Jew that ever lived will also, over a period of 40 years, be resurrected, and everybody will be living in Israel. And there will be space for all. Feiga, quickly, what was your second question?
You actually, yeah, resurrection of dead. That's what I was gonna ask also. But you kind of touched on it anyways. But one more quick one. What if a Jewish person is completely secular, does not believe in God, uh, very negative to all spiritual things? What's going to happen to
That
this person?
Jew, like every other Jew, will go to Israel and be so happy and inspired and want only God. Meaning, it's not only the Jewish people, it's the entire world. There's 8 billion mankind. And of course, we know what some of that 8 billion are like. We've experienced it in neon colors this year and this week. Every single human being will only want to serve God. When we have the complete revelation of the redemption, the temple comes down on Mount Moriah, the Jewish people go to Israel, God says what he will do. This is a verse from Isaiah. Es ruach hatumah a'avir min haaretz. The spirit of impurity I will remove from the land. So God will remove the evil that's been in this world since the primordial sin, since basically what we would call the beginning of time, 5,785 years. The world's going to go back to how it was before that primordial sin, but much, much, much better because of everything we've done for the past 5,785 years. So all evil will be gone. So when a Jew or a non-Jew is not believing in God, is denying God, is fighting God, it's not them. Every human being knows of God, every Jew and every non-Jew. Every human being innately senses the truth of God's reality. That's the core of our existence. But we all have different evils gripping us. We all have different cultures we've been exposed to. We all have different thoughts that have taken us over. We all have different pains that have warped or affected our thinking. So if a Jew or a non-Jew is saying, heresy against God, all that evil will be gone and they'll see clearly. And actually, it'll be very easy to see clearly because God will be completely revealed. So every one of us, every Jew and every non-Jew, will see God, will experience God, will want God. So the fact that a Jew lived their entire life denying God does not in any way mean they will not completely want God by the redemption. The difference between that Jew and someone else, say yourself or someone, is where they'll be holding on the ladder of their relationship. Because they won't have the knowledge, the merits that, let's say, you have because of everything you've done to serve God now. Meaning now, when God is not revealed, and it's a confusing, murky world sometimes, and we still choose to serve God, we choose to study his Torah, we choose to keep his laws, each one of us to the best of our ability, that's so valuable to God. That's so precious because it's hard, it's difficult, it's dark, and we're still finding him, embracing him, believing in him, serving him. So we can jump the rungs of the ladder, so to speak, between us and God. But when Mashiach comes, everything's going to be clear and obvious. There won't be any evil. There won't be any blinders on anyone's eyes, not my eyes and not a Hamas or a Hezbollah or someone in Pakistan. Nobody's going to have any blinders. We'll all only want God. But we'll all be holding in different places in terms of our relationship based on what we did when we had the opportunity to give God the ultimate pleasure of serving him despite not seeing, despite the darkness. And that opportunity won't be there anymore. So when God is completely revealed, when we have the complete revelation of redemption, we will all grow. Every human being will grow closer and closer and closer to God, but we'll all grow at the same pace. No more jumping, no more racing, no more skipping levels. That's only possible now. So this Jew, or this non-Jew, who denied God, who had no relationship to God, who pushed God away from them, so to speak, they're going to be starting off pretty low down the ladder. But they will grow and grow and grow and grow and grow. And you will also grow and grow and grow and grow and grow. And you'll both be growing at the same pace. So inevitably, you'll always be closer because you started off closer. But that Jew and you and every other Jew in the world all we will want, and all of mankind will want, all any human being will want, and actually all the plant life and animal life and all of creation will want is a closer and closer relationship with God. So someone who's very far is not going to spend their eternity being upset and depressed and angry at themselves for wasting their life before. They're going to feel very good in how they get closer and closer and closer. They will still feel good. They will still feel close. But there'll be a certain cap in terms of like the competition, so to